There's like two distinct types of people in the fall, either Beetlejuice, kitschy Halloween, or plaid scarves, apple picking. Figuring out which one of those streams your product and your core personas fit into. If it's the apple picking, nice sweater, kind of leaning into that like motif of more cozy things that smell like cinnamon. And if it's like a demographic that likes to have fun and likes the kitschy stuff. All the Halloween emojis are good. In your headline copy.
We've been going deep in like, how do we understand what the best evergreen testing process is from the media buying side in this modern meta media buying environment? Because there's been this big shift towards Advantage Plus, simplification of campaign structure, and we found some really interesting results.
Ready to expand your marketing strategy into CTV ads? Roku, yes, the same Roku that powers nearly half of all TV streaming in the US, has just launched a game-changing self-service advertising platform custom-built for CTV performance. Introducing Roku Ads Manager. Roku Ads Manager was built with growth marketers in mind. Roku's CTV algorithms optimize your ads in real time, effectively reaching your target audience at scale. Meanwhile, interactive action ads, our integration with Shopify and other performance features, make it easy for you to run ads for your viewers to convert directly from their Roku remote or mobile phone. It's easy to set up your first campaign. Head over to advertising.roku.com/DTC and get started today for as little as $500. It's time to take your CTV ads to the next level with Roku Ads Manager. It's all killer, no filler. I'm Eric, and I'm here with the Pilothouse Meta Brain Trust, made up of Taylor Kane and Avery, who is going to be a speaker at next week's C-Suite Mastermind. There still are a few tickets available if you're local. She's going to be leading a creative workshop of sorts. Maybe at the end of this conversation, we'll ping her a little bit about what exactly she's going to talk about. But otherwise, we're talking about how to make an impact on these smaller types of holidays we have coming up, like Halloween, to maybe even Thanksgiving. Probably not the election. You never know. But I'll kick it off to you guys. What's the impetus for this chat here, Aves?
Yeah, I think we're seeing some success with brands who have like early adopted Halloween launches or Halloween content. So fun like insider info. We're slated to talk about this next month, but we realized that we should really be talking about it this month because we've just noticed this like slight shift in consumer behavior where people are treating Halloween more like those bigger holidays like Christmas. So they're like decorating their homes for fall and Halloween. When you look at a lot of like brick and mortar retail spaces in specifically the US, they're like bringing forth these decorations and like very bats and skeletons and pumpkins kind of stuff popping up all over the place. So yeah, I wanted to push it up and kind of chat through what we see when like a creative and a buying point of view, just so you guys aren't late to the game, to the Halloween game.
I feel like I remember marketing back in the day, and Halloween was one that we always struggled a little bit with like monetizing, but you're absolutely right. People are making a bigger deal out of it. Halloween parties I was Dr. Evil last year. It was my best Halloween costume yet. But let's dive into it from an advertising perspective. So what did we learn last year that we're activating on this year?
Yeah, a big thing last year is I think we started to see this trend where it started to shift a little earlier. Like brands we were working with who dropped specific product launches for Halloween saw some like it take off even as early as like late September. So that was one kind of big thing from like a brand planning perspective that was a little bit different this year.
As soon as you've seen a Spirit Halloween, if you see a Spirit Halloween in your town, you can start. And I did see it just the other day, so you were ready.
Exactly. Like, or I mean, maybe pumpkin spice lattes dropping like at the end of August. That might be where we go next year. Like even getting earlier and earlier.
Get spooky earlier.
Exactly. Yeah. People love the fall, and that I think that like positive kind of vibe around transitioning into the fun parts of the seasonal shifts. But yeah, I mean, like that's kind of the big thing from the overall perspective. And then in recent years, I mean, we've seen a lot of success like launching special offers or sales or kind of brand type moments to align to the seasonal moment of Halloween. And it's been a pretty powerful testing ground, like Halloween itself and kind of that lead up period to what are we thinking about as we then transition right into November and peak gifting season and as far as kind of planning like what's resonating with the audience the best.
Super neat. So, Aves, break it down for us a little bit. What goes into crafting a successful campaign for Halloween?
There's like two different ways you can go about it, because some people, obviously, you can, if you run like a hoodie brand, it's very easy to put together a couple limited edition hoodies for the season, which I would definitely recommend doing. But if you have maybe like I love using mugs as an example on this podcast because I always have a mug beside me. But if you've got a mug brand, it might be a little bit difficult to create like a product for the season. So if we're talking about making a like specific product and drop that's fall or Halloween focused, I definitely say thinking into like the type of person who purchases your product. So if you are that person with a hoodie brand and you aim towards like a elder millennial male is your core demographic, maybe doing something that looks similar to like a Beetlejuice pinstripe, because you know that's coming up. That's going to be like nostalgic for that person and that's going to stick out on the feed. But if you're a hoodie brand and your target demo is like a Gen Z girl, maybe something that's a bit like witchier, you throw the cats on there, something that's more relevant to that person. So
Beetlejuice 2 is out
deeper.
now, by the way, though. So Beetlejuice 2 is out. Now is the time to do your Beetlejuice theme stuff.
Yeah. I've never seen Beetlejuice. I'm going to watch it for the first time this weekend, and I'm very excited. The first one, I feel like it's like one of those movies that is a classic, but I'm going to watch it and be like, have you guys seen this? Like, it's so good. Act like I discovered it.
I remember seeing it and thinking that my parents telling me about it at first. I'm like, this doesn't sound like any movie I've ever heard of. So, but it fits with your theme generally. And we'll get into it maybe more about the creative, but about what's your term? What do you always say, Aves? With creative?
Getting weird.
Getting weird, right? Beetlejuice got weird. It's like almost the quintessential like popular movie that went so weird, and you know, then it allowed them to get even weirder with Edward Scissorhands and such. So we'll get into getting weird. I like it. But can you give an example of like I like that idea of kind of nailing it down for different generations and stuff. But about like again, you don't have to mention any brands, but give us an example even of like what we're doing with clients potentially within specific spaces, because just to give people an idea of what they could do.
A good example, I'll go the non-product route for this because obviously it's a lot harder. And if you haven't slated a product launch that's Halloween based, you're probably not able to get that done with the manufacturer now. So if you're just going the like creating a brand moment or cooperating with the culture, that's something I've been saying a lot lately too, like not co-opting culture, but cooperating with it. So if you're cooperating with the Halloween trends, it's so simple, but I feel like it works for any account. Like mugs, again, great example. Cold coffee is scary. Hit rate of 100%. Like putting the problem agitation is scary. Works like every single time. And I think also something that I've seen like some brands who are a bit more branded, they'll be hesitant to like switch up a font to something really kind of kitschy and Halloweeny.
Yeah.
And they don't want to stray too far. Yeah. But I think like Halloween, more so than other holidays, is about having fun and kind of being a little bit kitschy and being a bit out there. So definitely like kind of letting the shackles go. And yeah, just finding ways, again, the blank is scary is a really easy way to bring your problem that you're solving into the Halloween kind of stratosphere.
And that, yeah, there aren't a lot of people launching custom Halloween products. There may be opportunities with fall colors or things like that you could tie to it as well. But I think just building it into some of the language of your campaigns is smart as well. Are you adding other things to it? Are you adding other fall elements, pumpkins, witches, such things?
Yeah, totally. I was just having a conversation with Taylor in the background about adding some like zombie emojis to some page copy that I'd written and some ad copy that he was writing. But yeah, I think like there's like obviously two distinct types of people in the fall, like either Beetlejuice, kitschy Halloween, or plaid scarves, apple picking. So I think probably figuring out which one of those streams your product and your core kind of personas fit into. And then if it's the like apple picking, nice sweater type of fall, kind of leaning into that like motif of more cozy things that smell like cinnamon, kind of an elevated version of it. And then if it's like a demographic that likes to have fun and likes the kitschy stuff, all the Halloween emojis are good, you know, every single one, line them up in your headline copy. And yeah, try to just figure out which stream you fit in.
I've probably told this story on the podcast before, but back in my day as a display advertiser, we were working for an online jewelry company, and we just took all of our top creatives and had leaves fall through our creatives, just kind of thing. It's because fall is one of the most evocative seasons, I think, and Halloween plays it well into that psychologically. So I think there is a really neat opportunity to create some creative stuff around it. I've seen some of the work that our design team has done on some of these like really simple, like a lot of our creative seems to focus on like really simple, stark, powerful product images and shading them and coloring them in different ways that make them more evocative. I think there's a really great brand moments to be had that way.
Totally.
And then Taylor, you had some other things that we're going to chat about here. Oh, what beyond the spooky season? What would you like to chat about?
Yeah, I think one thing that was interesting to chat about is knowing that we're also in kind of peak stock the pond season, or it's like it's if you haven't started kind of getting into there, we're probably just within weeks away from it coming. So I was thinking it'd be kind of cool to run through
back up for those in our audience who weren't on our webinar, because not everyone was on our webinar. Explain just what you mean by stock the pond and in its place within the whole year cycle.
Yeah, so stock in the pond refers to both what you're doing from like an audience perspective as well as a brand and seasonal moment planning, basically all in all planning for your brand to maximize really like reaping the fruits of your efforts throughout the year in Q4. So basically being intentional about ensuring that you're ready to maximize the opportunity that exists, whether it be through audience pools you're building up or different things you're planning within your brand calendar to align with broader events as well.
That's right. Stocking the pond and building your tackle box.
Exactly.
Your ruthless metaphors.
Yeah. So what I was thinking of getting into is just sharing some insights we've had recently around how we're approaching Evergreen creative testing, given that is, from my perspective and a lot of our experience in the past, just such a massive part, creating a really good foundation for stock in the pond going into Q4. So you can then layer in excitement pillars and like all these other elements like spooky season type stuff around it, and then take advantage of everything. So if it sounds good, Eric, I can kind of get into some takeaways.
Yeah.
So one thing that we've been doing is we've been reviewing and going deep in like, how do we understand like what the best Evergreen testing process is from the media buying side in this modern meta media buying environment? Because there's been this big shift towards Advantage Plus, simplification of campaign structure, and we found some really interesting results from leveraging correlation coefficients a little bit more and basically looking at taking your primary KPIs, so what you care most about, right? It might be CPA or ROAS. And then within your structure, right? Like you have your foundation, you want to focus on prospecting and retargeting, make sure you're not just draining retargeting pools, but you're stocking your prospecting pools as well, stocking your retargeting pools with prospecting always. And so what we were looking at was how do we approach Evergreen testing with variable controls, maximizing creative efficiency, and also maximizing account performance. Because there's different schools of thought, right? Like there's debates about should you test directly in ASC and CBO, then let Meta move towards the most efficient ads? Should you run a more variable controlled method? And what we've found that's been a big win recently has been laying out, like it's pretty simple, but in a doc, laying out like what your expected results are based on your account averages from your primary KPI to other KPIs that you might think or feel pretty good about or have seen success from in the past. So stuff like cost per add to cart, cost per checkout initiated, CTR, like link CTR, custom metrics like social proof building ones. And so what's been really interesting is we're noticing it varies brand to brand, right? Like what basically the relationship between our Evergreen ads with the best ROAS that are at scale. I think an important caveat here is that we've looked to basically pull these reports for ads that meet a minimum criteria of the primary indicator. So it might be like 50 purchases, for example, or something higher than that, so that we, like relative to what's going on in accounts, depending. And then we'll go in and we'll look at we'll scatter plot, like what are we seeing between secondary KPI and the anchor KPI. And so we're looking for like linear relationships and outliers to get an understanding of like when I'm as a media buyer trying to launch a pretty lean test without overdoing the budget, how do I feel pretty confident that the secondary KPI is likely a heavy influencer of my primary KPI? And it's been really interesting. Like we've been able to find some big wins from running, pretty tight budgets, but uncovering stronger relationships between certain KPIs, and then basically going from there and still running variable control testing when the situation allows for it, but graduate out into a phase 2 campaign and then keep scaling out horizontally as we find more creative concept winners horizontally and vertically. But we're finding like a really great growth system from this. So
walk me through this from a fake client perspective, where you are lining up KPI and uncovering a new data path or whatever.
Yeah. So what I would do is so first and foremost, I'll lay out what my account averages are for like the last 30 days or whatever I've done so far, right? Like it'll be different depending on your established or your new to launch.
It's a mug company.
Okay. So we got the mug company. I'm going to look at like the top performance marketing KPIs that I feel pretty good about. So like things that I think would matter: my link CTR, my cost per meaningful social proof, which is a custom metric you can create, my ROAS, my cost per add to cart, my cost per checkout initiated. That's like a good starting point. And then I'm going to go and say, let's say ROAS is my primary target. I'm going to say, okay, like what group of evergreen ads, if available, have reached what I would like to see? So like, what is my average CPA, and how many, if I want to say get 50 purchases just to keep it pretty small, but like enough that, it's not fluke, that times the CPA, that gives me the minimum spend cutoff for my top evergreen ads. And then I'll look at the top evergreen ads and evaluate these relationships. You can look at all ads. You can look at test ads side by side to get more data, and then look at the kind of staircase that's happening. But the big thing from there, then you scatter plot them out in separate charts. You might compare your attribution settings. You might look at the trend for 1-day click versus 7-day click, for example, by exporting out of a custom report. Google Sheets also has a correlation coefficient formula, which is easy to use if you want like a really direct, here's what it is and here's like where the bigger relationships are. And then from there, as I start testing creative, I set my expected amounts of my secondary KPI to graduate quicker, and then graduate up. And from there, basically look to try to find scalable winners. But I can say like from accounts we're working in, we've seen pretty strong results pretty quickly, over like a 90-day period of focusing on this. Like we've had a lot of the results from this jump right up into the top tier of spenders and performers.
So you're finding winners quicker with this, by correlating all this data, you're finding winners quicker by being able to kind of fingerprint them. Like this one has all the hallmarks. So putting more confidence into creative sooner with better data. Is that what I'm hearing?
Exactly. Yeah. And it's like, again, with this type of thing, there's so much debate. There's rarely a perfect scenario for every brand. But like even for me, like from doing these exercises, like I'm learning like more and more and getting more in tune with everything. And then that means that my conversations with our creative leads for all the brands we work with are getting that much stronger and that much more efficient to be focused on what do we think is going to move the needle the most aligned to our brand strategy.
From the creative side of things, what does this all mean to you, Aves?
Yeah, I think exactly what Taylor said at the end, where it's just like you're kind of shoring up the work a little bit more than before, when you're just like whiteboard, beautiful minding it, looking in either platform GA4, whatever platform you use to look at results, where it's like you're consuming a ton of information at one time, especially as someone who's like on the creative side. You're not thinking about what am I going to raise spend on? You're thinking about what is the next best version of this ad, or like what do I have to plan for? So you're typically just ingesting so much data that it doesn't always feel very clear. But like Taylor said, there's a lot of nuance and it works for different brands in different ways. But yeah, on the creative side, it definitely just cuts down that like almost overload of information when you're just generally looking to see, like I call them in my work like spicy ads, like what could be good, what has potential. And when you do that work without this framework, it's kind of just chaos. And I feel like when I've tried to like walk clients through how I do it too, it's always so convoluted, where it's like, okay, well, I look at this report in Northbeam, and then I look at this report, and then I make notes and I draw things. I have like a whiteboard, and it's so hectic and scattered, but scatter plots kind of center it a little bit and bring it in.
Super cool. Because I know it can be very hard to dislodge creatives as well. Like we're going through this on the D2C side right now, where we have a kind of creative that's worked extremely well, and we're trying to test into different avatars and actually knowing whether we could put our full budget behind another creative and to try to dislodge this one without knowing these downstream KPIs has been challenging. Interesting. There's another note here about how we're using benchmarks. What is this? Does this relate to this topic, Taylor? Is this the second one?
Yeah, this relates to this topic. It's like when it comes down to it, this I'm fine. Like what we found is like this type of approach where you're doing these types of exercises. The more data you have, the better, right? Because like even though 50 purchases can be indicative of where you are now and going to where you want to be next, it's hard to say that that's like a significant amount of significance. It's like what Meta wants you to have for purchases in a week. So like when it comes down to it, I think like the other part of this is how you compile all this info into understanding where your benchmarks are going and how you're working to be intentional to improve those over time. But that's kind of the main point with that.
Very cool. Aves, I really liked your point about platform cooperation. It was a platform cooperation instead of platform co-opting. Co-op, it's a hard line for brands to walk.
Culture,
that's right.
Like, because I feel like this is a different tangent, but I was like going deep on this rabbit hole of just like being so sick of feeling like a culture vulture marketing and like thinking about. Also, I've never watched Mad Men. I haven't watched a lot of movies and TV in my life. I'm a big book person. But it's like the esteem and coolness of marketing has like gone out the window because now everyone makes the same static that says like, my product is very demure and it's very mindful. And then everyone hates it and we all move on. So it's this like interesting concept of like, you are connecting with and cooperating with culture, but you're not co-opting it. So it's like, you're not just copy and pasting everything you see and jumping on a trend and then destroying culture in a way. It's like you're figuring out how to play within it and be respectful that you are a brand. And this kind of like post-millennial earnestness is dead a little bit. I don't know
Culture
why I said having fun.
Well, culture vulture is a great term too, because by the time brands are commenting on a trend, it's usually dead. Right. And they're really picking the bones in a lot of ways. And so how can you, and I think this is apt across not just like picking memes and trends, but like just being a fresh marketer. It's like everyone, I come from the affiliate space where someone figures something out and then it's just 6 months till everyone's doing the same thing. And I feel like in performance marketing, it's very similar. There's a lot of that instinct still. And I think that fits in well with your theme of keeping it weird or being weird in your ads, willing to be weird. Because those are the things that you do differently that make you stand out, that can create new winning channels rather than just like copying everyone else.
Yeah, totally. It makes you stand out. And it also like, this is also something I've been thinking about and working on a lot too. It then stops you from just building this superficial base of customers that maybe you're looking for like a repeat purchase once and that's the LTV. And all of a sudden you have like a fan base, like people who are hyped about your brand and they're hyped about the product. Because you are interacting with them in a way that's like genuine, but not overstepping. It's not like, hey, diva, buy this, love you. It's, I am selling something, but this is something that you like, that I like. We're like-minded people in that way. I think it creates like much more long-term value to a single session.
It makes sense. Media is changing so fast, like in terms of the people who get the most impressions in the media now versus 10 years ago, right? Like, so it only makes sense that advertising and how you communicate that way is going to change as well. So very cool. Does this lead into what you're going to be potentially talking about at our upcoming C-Suite Mastermind? Give us a little preview. This podcast has been all over this. This is the best. This is like the art and the science represented in one Meta podcast, big time. But Aves, finish us off by telling us what you're going to be talking about at C-Suite.
Yeah, totally. That was like a miniature version of the Giga rant that I'll go on C-Suite and just talking about like getting a little bit more into, because I think a misunderstanding that some people have sometimes. If I say like get weird, it doesn't mean like be really random and have no rhyme or reason. So we'll be getting into the idea of like really understanding your customer bases and personas, and then understanding how to make a load of content that still ties back into that person, their needs, their interests, where they fit culturally, what do they see organically. Because one thing that is true of marketing today is you do need a lot of content, but finding a way to keep that content tethered to like one point and one person, sort of the idea there. So yeah, going through how to make engaging hooks, and a ton of them, but for very specific people, and like the kind of things that I use like to map out those people, those tools. We'll be talking about that kind of thing.
Very cool. And for Halloween, don't forget that the pain point that your product solves is extra spooky around Halloween. So you can just call that out in your ad. So if as a parting shot, everyone's just test some ads in the fall about how the pain point related to your product is scary. just like cold coffee in these mugs that Aves keeps selling. Thanks for coming on today, and I look forward to hanging out more at C-Suite.
Yeah, hope to see some of you guys there. I feel so podcaster saying that.
Yeah.
If you're listening and you can make it to Victoria, please come.
We call it like the D2C newsletter like mastermind, but it really is more of a D2C podcast mastermind, just because like the speakers are all people that are on the podcast, have been on the podcast, I think in every case, and most of the people who come are podcast listeners. So it's sort of like it's a really great way to build the community for this podcast. So if you're listening, there still are a few seats available. This is going to go out. No, actually, well, we'll see. Actually, we're doing a little plug here, so maybe we'll bump this one up. But yeah. Anyways, if not, you missed it. Too late. You got to come to the next one. Cool. Thanks for listening to today's episode. If you're not getting the D2C newsletter, you can subscribe for free at directtoconsumer.co. And if you want to learn more about Pilothouse's all-killer, no-filler services, take off to pilothouse.co. I'm Eric Dick, and this has been the D2C Podcast. We'll see you next time.